Alright guys, and welcome to the very first video on this brand new channel. Today we are going to be learning Photoshop, and I'm going to be going over the complete beginner basics, and we're going to be making a profile picture. Mine is going to be for YouTube, but you can use the same techniques for whatever sort of image you want. This is the very first video on this channel, so I would massively appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button to support me if you're interested in seeing more videos. In today's video we're going to be making this picture that's on the screen now. So let's dive in. Alright, so I'm inside Photoshop and I need to make a new image, but before I do that I need to know what dimensions the image needs to be. So I've done a quick Google search for YouTube profile picture size, and this tells me that it's supposed to be 800 by 800. So I'm going to switch back to Photoshop and I'm going to click Create New over here at the left, and I want the width and the height to be 800. So I've already changed this before I started the tutorial, but you can just type in whatever number you want in here. So we're going to go with 800 by 800. Its resolution is 300 pixels per inch. Color mode is RGB, 16-bit. Background contents, I'm going to change this to transparent, and then I'm just going to leave these bottom ones as they are. So now we've got our blank document here. I'm going to go into the folder where I've already prepared a few images that I want to use. And the first thing I'm going to do is get this image. This is going to be my main background image. And I'm going to drag it down to the taskbar where the Photoshop icon is to bring up Photoshop. And then I can just drop it here. And then we can see around the edges we've got these little anchor points, and these are the transform points. So we can drag from these points to resize it, and by default in the newer versions of Photoshop anyway, it will automatically keep your aspect ratio, which means that no matter which point you size it from, it's not going to go out of shape. Whereas if I hold the shift key, I can then resize it and it will stretch and warp out of shape. I don't want it to warp out of shape, so I'm just going to stick with the default transform settings. What I want with this image is for it to fill the whole screen. So what I'm going to do is grab it by the top right corner here, and then I'm going to drag it. We can see at the moment it's going to drag it off to one side, and like the left side is not moving. So I'm just going to undo that, and this time when I drag I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard. And then when I drag, it's doing it from the center, so all of the sides are going to be equal. I'm going to make sure it's just a little bit bigger than the frame, so it definitely covers all of the sides. And then when I'm happy, I'm just going to hit enter on the keyboard, and that's just going to like confirm the action. And we can see that the transform points have now gone. And then I'm going to go back into my folder of images, and I'm going to take this image, which has got a lot more color to it. And again, I'm going to drag it onto Photoshop and drop it on top. And then I'm going to repeat the process of resizing it. So I'll just hold Alt on the keyboard and make it just a little bit bigger than the frame and hit enter. So what I'm wanting to do is combine these two images. So I want to take the color from this and overlay it on top of the background. So I could go and use like the cutting out tools, like the select tool, and delete the spare bits, or I could get the rubber and rub it out, but that's just going to take ages. So the best way to get the result that I want right now with this image anyway, because there's quite a lot of dark areas in this image, you can see the blacks. So what I want to do is get rid of the black and the dark areas. I just want to be left with like the color. So the quickest way to do that is click this little box here. This is the blend modes, and if I scroll through these blend modes, you can see that it's mixing the picture in different ways. But the one that I want is screen, and what screen does is get rid of all of the black. So I'm just left with the color, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to leave it on screen, and then that job is done. I've got rid of all the black, and now if I wanted I can resize it, get it sitting exactly where I want. I think maybe move it to the right just a little bit, because this ball thing in the middle looked a little bit off center, and then I can just hit enter. I've still got the transform controls here, so what I'm going to do is go to the top and where it says show transform controls, I'm just going to untick that. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my images again, and then I've got this final picture here. Just going to do exactly the same again, drop it in the middle. But instead of making it the full size, I'm just going to hit enter. And again, I'm going to go down to screen. And then we can see that we've now got this sort of electric looking ball in the middle. And I can move this around. I'm going to bring up my show transform controls again. And I'm going to resize this, make it a little bit bigger. And then get rid of the transform controls. For now, I'm just going to hide the layer underneath so we can see better what's going on. So if we look, we can actually see the frame of that picture. See, we've got this line here at the top and the bottom. So what I want to do is rub out those lines so it's not an obvious, like you can't obviously tell that I've just mixed two pictures together. So I would go on the rubber and I would just start rubbing out, but we can see that it's not going to let me. It's not got my rubber, and then it's popping up. It says this smart object must be rasterized. So I'm going to click cancel. What we need to do is right click on the layer and then go down to rasterize layer. And now that I've clicked that, we can see that my rubber is here. So I've got quite a soft brush here. I've made it quite big and I've turned the hardness right down. And then that's going to give me a nice soft brush here. If I had the hardness up full, we're just going to get a sharp cut and you can see the circle there. So I'm going to undo that. I'll change it back to 0% hardness, and now I can rub it out and it's nice and soft so we can't see any lines. So I can rub the top one out, rub the bottom one out, and then if there's any other bits I wanted to get rid of, maybe like this big blob of light here, don't want that, don't want that, so I can get rid of those. And now I'm just left with this in the center. Turn my other layer back on, and then we've just got that nice cool bit of extra detail there. Alright, so next up I'm going to hold shift on the keyboard and I'm going to click to the bottom layer, and that'll select all three of them. And then I can press Ctrl and G on the keyboard to put them in a group. I can double click on the group and then I can just rename this BG for background, and then I'm going to click the little padlock icon. So now this layer is locked and I can't accidentally change anything or move it out of place. If I go to drag it, I'm just going to get an error. So that's now secured in place and I can't accidentally mess it up. Alright, so next up I'm going to add my text. So I'm going to go down to the T icon here, which means text, and I can just click anywhere on here. I'm going to aim for the middle-ish and click, and then I can start typing in my text. So I'm going to go ahead and put infinite digital, and then I can go back to the move tool at the top here. I'm going to turn on the transform controls, and then I'm just going to drag this into the middle, and then we'll get this cross that indicates that it's right in the middle. Okay, now I can turn off show transform controls, and then over here on the right I've got the settings for the text, so I can go through and I can pick different fonts, all these different fonts. These ones are fonts that I've downloaded off the internet, so Photoshop doesn't come with these fonts, but you can go on some websites and get free fonts. I'll put some links in the description for the font websites that I use. Then you just need to download them, and then when you download you just right click and click install, and then they're going to be there in your Photoshop. So I'm just going to stick with this font that I've got here. Underneath I've got settings for the size, so I can drag left and right to resize, or I can type in specific values. I'm going to Ctrl and Z to undo that. Here we've got the line height, I can make the size between the lines bigger or smaller. Here we've got the space between the letters, so I can make a bigger gap between each of the letters. I like to have my letters quite close together, so I've made that less than 0. I've brought them closer together. I'm happy with about -60 there. Underneath we've got some options for stretching the size of the text, so I could make the text wider or thinner. I'm just going to leave these where it was. Okay, and then underneath I've got colour settings, so I could go and change the colour. We've also got this cool colour picker, so I can pick colours directly from my image, which I like to do a lot, because that helps you stick to the theme colours. So I can go and pick light colours or the dark colours. So for now I'm just going to cancel that and I'm going to stick with the white. I think I might make the font a tiny bit smaller actually, since it's right up to the edge. And as I make the text smaller, we can see that we've got a bigger gap between the lines, so I'm going to make that a bit smaller. And I'm just using my keyboard up and down arrows here to adjust the settings more finely than dragging it. And then I'm just going to drag it again and make sure it's right in the centre. So next up, we're going to start adding some style to the text, and this is done really easily with the built-in Photoshop styles. So I'm just going to right click on the layer over here and go up to blending options, and that's going to give us a whole bunch of settings here. First off, I'm going to go into the drop shadow and turn that on. I'm going to reset to default, so it's going to be how you've got it. And then I'm going to show you how I set up my drop shadow. So first off, I'm going to turn the opacity right up to 100, so it's nice and strong and I can see exactly what's going on. And then the spread, I'm going to turn it up quite a bit. I think I'll turn the distance right down to 0, so it's totally centered. But if you want a bit of distance, you can mess around with that. If you want it to look like maybe there's a light source at the top and then that's casting the shadow, you'll want a bit of distance, and then you can choose the angle for where the light is. Like this is your light source, so if your light was underneath you would drag it down to the bottom, or if it was above you drag it to the top. But for now I've got no distance, so the light source will not actually make a difference. Okay, so I'm quite happy with the spread there, and then I'm going to turn the size up. And then I can maybe turn the spread down a little bit. Okay. If I wanted to turn how strong it is down a bit, I could just adjust the opacity. But I like a nice strong shadow, so I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to click on the colour, and then I'm going to colour pick from my picture, and I'm going to pick the darkest colour that I can see. So I'll probably go with this bit down here. And it's not made a huge difference, but it's just it just means I'm not getting the like generic common black, and I'm getting more of a colour that's being picked from our theme. And I'm going to click OK. And as it is, that looks pretty cool, but there's plenty more effects to have a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and add a stroke, and the stroke is just like an outline. So at the moment I've got just a black. I can make this bigger or smaller. I'm going to go for something quite thin, so I might go with 8 pixels. And then underneath I can add another stroke. I'm just going to get rid of this for now and show you how we add it on. So if you look to the right of the stroke here, we've got a little plus icon, and that's going to make an identical copy of this stroke. So with this one I'm just going to change the colour and pick something from my background, so maybe just pick in fact I'll pick the lightest colour for now. And then if I click on the little pixels here, then I can just use the up key on my keyboard, and now we're getting another stroke going around the black. And then I can go and pick a bit more of a softer colour, so I don't want it to be super bright. So I would just have a pick about and then see what I'm happy with. Yeah, I think I'll maybe stick with that. We can also change the fill type of the stroke here. So we could go gradient, and then we can have 2 colours. So I could click on the black here, click on the colour, and then I can colour pick. Maybe pick that one. In fact, we don't even need to go into the colour here to colour pick. You just need to click on the colour there and then colour pick. Maybe that one. So you can get some cool effects by picking 2 different colours. I think I'll maybe stick with that. Okay. And then we've got bevel and emboss. So this is going to give you a sort of 3D look. So we've got the size here. And we've got the depth. So I think I'll put the depth at about, say, 80%. I'm going to turn the shadow opacity right up for now so I can see what it's doing. And then I can pick the size that I like. So maybe something like that. And then turn the opacity right down so it's quite subtle. We've got the different shapes here for the shading, and they're going to give you quite different results. So you can have a flick through, see what you like. I think I will just go for this one. And I've also already colour picked some colours from my picture for these. So you can go in here and pick whatever you like. We've also got the angle up here, a bit like we did in the drop shadow. So we can sort of control the strength of it with the opacity here. I'm going to keep mine quite subtle. And you can soften it with this. We've also got the technique settings of smooth, hard, chisel. Can't really see at the moment, but if I turn this right up then you will be able to see. So we've got smooth, which is sort of like rounded. Chisel hard is going to give you harder edges. Chisel soft sort of gives you a lot of artifacts that I don't really like, so I never use that one. I'm going to stick with smooth. No, I'm not. I'm going to stick with chisel hard. It's a bit more techno-y, I suppose, if it's not soft. I think I'll put it on like put it on 5% because then it gets rid of those lines that were showing up, and then I can turn this opacity to about there. Go back to the drop shadow, and I think I might adjust this a little bit. I sort of want the black to fill the back here. Maybe make the size a bit bigger. Alright, so now that I'm happy with my image, I want to export it as an actual image. So I'm going to go to File. For online images, like they're not going to be printed out, they're not going to be on a physical object. I go to Export and Save for Web. And this gives me a lot more options than the normal just save as image would have given me. So in here, I can well, first off I can see the size down here, so it tells me how big the file is going to be, and then I've got options up here, different file types. I'm going to go with the JPEG, and then we've got quality settings here, so if I wanted I could knock this down to something like 50%, and then I can see that that's took the file size down quite a lot, so it's only 100k now, and when it was at 100% it was nearly 500k. And you can zoom in and out to get a good look at your picture. When I zoom in, this is quite pixelated, but that's because it's at 300% zoom. So from here, it looks fine. And even when I knock it down to like 50%, you can't really notice much of a difference, but it's made quite a big difference to the file size. And then down here, we can also adjust the width and the height. So for example, if we made a picture that was like, I don't know, 2000 pixels or something, we could then go ahead and make different smaller versions of it for different purposes. So I'm going to leave this as it is, and then all I need to do next is go save. And then I can call this YouTube profile. And then that's going to save that off, and it'll save really quickly. And then I can go into my folder, and here it is. So that's about it for this tutorial. I'm going to get more tutorials up for Photoshop really soon, and I'm also going to be doing a load of tutorials for Blender, Unreal Engine. I think I might do some for After Effects and Element 3D, and whatever else I can think of. So stay tuned, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications if you want to catch my next videos.